Hello, Wake Up New Zealand. I was very enthused by viewing a video by Trevor Loudon on the communist traits in the parliamentarians, Chris Hipkins, etc., in Parliament, the rainbow community of politicians behind the closed doors of Parliament, in the cesspit of Parliament. And it's very interesting. So I will give you the link to that. But I'd like to add a bit more to that because communism is rife in New Zealand, where certain socialist movement, a party, absolutely promotes, supports terrorism, and that person who is influential in that party has been given a status where they can commentate from New NZ TV NZ public media. It's government paid media. Government, you paid for that. Now, I'll start with a bit of a history lesson around this. So in 1957, a feathered cloak was given to Chairman Mao Zedong by a filmmaker by the name of Ramaiti Mahi Hayward on behalf of the fifth Maori king, Kuroki, as a gift of goodwill by New Zealanders. So Peter Sharples and the Prime Minister's delegation were involved in a ceremony in a national museum in Beijing on the 12th of April 2013, where they were to bring this Maori cloak back to New Zealand, and they showed that Maori cloak in Te Papa, Wellington, from the 13th to 6th for a week. So Chairman Mao Zedong has a huge legacy of murder, cruel, evil, the greatest mass murderer of the 20th century. And he's referenced in the Black Book of Communism. He murdered approximately 65 million Chinese and nationalists. His attempts was to make China a socialist country. Anyone who opposed him was executed, tortured, murdered, imprisoned, died of starvation. Millions of people died of starvation. That was done deliberately so. He forced famine on millions of Chinese people. He was named as a major accomplishment of the Great Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976. And this, if anyone's read about it, The Great Leap Forward, a deadly combination of lies about grain production, disastrous farming methods, misdistribution of food that forced worst famine in human history. He was totally evil. So he had gangs of Red Guards. There were young women and men between the ages of 14 and 21 that would seek out teachers and other people who opposed Chairman Mao's ideologies, his narratives, his directives, his demands, his restrictions. So he's still the most remained honoured person to the Chinese Communist Party. And they call this in the spirit of Chairman Mao Zedong. So if China's flag was a swastika, I think New Zealand government would still do business with them. So Robert Muldoon, he was the first to meet Chairman Mao over in China, first Prime Minister to go over there. And that was in April 1976. And in 1920, he actually formed a new relationship with China. In 1920, the Communist Party was founded in New Zealand. The Socialist Unity Party was formed in 1966 with a strong position. They were pro-Chairman Mao. So they made frequent influential members of that Communist Party made frequent trips to China. On numerous occasions in 1960s, the Communist Party of New Zealand produced a weekly newspaper called The People's Voice and the monthly New Zealand Communist Review. At a far-left bookshop in Derby Street, which is close to Queen Street, off Queen Street in Auckland, New Zealand, and that shop was called Progressive Books. So Ray Nunes and a communist delegation went to Albania to address ideological differences. On their return, the Communist Party adopted a pro Mao Zedong resolution under the spirit of this evil dictator, murderer, Chairman Mao. So you've got the former members of the Communist Party of New Zealand, V.G. Wilcox, Alec Ostler, Don Ross. In 1988, they changed the name to the Organisation for Marxist Unity. This was founded with new far-left students and ex-Communist Party members in New Zealand. 1980, Ron Smith of the Wellington Marxist-Leninist Organisation merged with the Northern Communist Organisation to form the Workers' Communist League. Later, they absorbed a smaller Marxist group called the Workers' Party. They too declared their resolution of spirit in the name of Chairman Mao. And they were signatory to the Declaration of the Revolutionary Internationalism movement in March 1984. So the Maoist movement. Later, remnants of the Communist Party in New Zealand remained until it merged with the International Socialist Organisation. Remember Ardern, president of the International Socialist Organisation for Youth. Their politics were based on socialism and communism, hence the Communist-Socialist merger that became called the Socialist Workers' Party in New Zealand, the extreme left Communist Socialist Party of Aotearoa pro-Chairman Mao. Ray Nunes was influential in forming the Communist Party of New Zealand under the spirit of Chairman Mao, and founded the Workers' Party in 1981, the Socialist Communist Workers' Party. They published a booklet called Spark, describing themselves as pro-Chairman Mao. Their former National Party leader was Daphne Whitmore. Other influences were Philip Ferguson and Don Franks. In June 2011, these individuals joined other members of the Workers' Socialist Party New Zealand to launch an online publication called Red Line. They were previously called the Anti-Capitalist Alliance, a socialist communist political party. In 2013, they actually transformed from a mass socialist workers' party to a fighting Marxist socialist communist propaganda group called Fight Back. Rebecca Broad was the secretary and national organizer of that. They campaigned, organized themselves in workplaces and in local elections, general elections. In 2007, the Workers' Socialist Party stood in 4 mayoral elections: Christchurch, Wellington, Dunedin, and Waitakere, West Auckland. Rebecca Broad was the candidate for West Auckland, Waitakere, in July 2008. So in 2011, they resigned from elections and their registration was cancelled in May 2011. So teacher Paul Hopkinson stood in the 2005 election. He was of the Workers' Party. He was charged with burning the New Zealand flag and was suspended as candidate for the Christchurch general election as a Workers' Party candidate. Joe Cosgrove is another name from the Socialist Workers' Party, was president of Victoria University Wellington Students Association in 2008. Byron Clark, who authored the new book, Fear. He stood for a mayoral candidate in 2007. He described himself as a history student and a retail worker. He introduced the book, Fear, that he authored, New Zealand Hostile Underworld of Extremists, in February this year. Clark, obsessed with gaslighting, what he calls the alt-right of New Zealand. The book was advertised as non-fiction, but very fiction, and there's been several reviews on that. A newsroom reported his book as being a bestseller on the 2nd of March this year. However, reviews include lack of evidence, badly classified, cries of fascism in the book by anonymous person, XXXX, and another X, calling the WEF a conspiracy theory. So Clark's book, using political ideology, presenting little to no evidence, lack of demonstrable activity, and paragraphs are flawed. Clark, being a commentator of government-owned TVNZ1, commentator for Stuff New Zealand and News Hub, government-funded money. The government-funded news media. Clark was a guest writer of Spin-Off. He authored an article about women and alt-right in New Zealand, which included Lauren Sutherland, and closer to home, Carol Seki with her campaign video against the UN Global Compact on Migration. Other names he stated was Hannah Tamaki, Helen Houghton, Hannah from Counterspin, and Voices for Freedom. Byron Clark, the Socialist Communist Workers' Party activist that promoted T-shirts for sale that raised $1,000 to go directly to a terrorist organization called the Palestinian Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And across those T-shirts was written, "Resistance is not terrorism." The Workers' Party produced a 48-page pamphlet released by Clark, the Workers' Party, and there it shows he was supporting the sale of raising $1,000 to go directly to this terrorist group, the Palestinian Popular Front of Liberation. T-shirts written across them, "Resistance is not terrorism." So Byron Clark notes that Palestinian Liberation Front, that's the PFLP, socialists around the world, that is their duty to support them. That's what he said. And he supported a woman terrorist from the PFLP who threatened to blow up passenger planes. Of course, Byron Clark will say, no, I didn't do that. Oh, yes, he did. The evidence is there. He supported his comrades selling T-shirts to fund a terrorist organization, one that is a designated terrorist organization out of 4 out of 5 countries, the Five Eyes. New Zealand, of course, abstains from calling them a designated terrorist organization, but the UN calls them a designated terrorist organization. And here he reports, Byron Clark says that all of the $1,000 funds that were raised through T-shirts go directly to the PFLP. The PLFP, politically military. It was in 2010 that the Workers' Party referred to the raising of that money to support the Palestinian Front. The UN Security Council on the 1st of November 2021 reported that the Palestinian Liberation Front is a murderous terrorist organization responsible for countless terrorist attacks against Israelis and other nationals. So the PFLP have been reported as Palestinian militant group that takes part in suicide attacks, making the martyr of female suicide bombers and military use of children. Another reference to Byron Clark is in plain sight, March the 6th, 2023. So I will put the link to that on my website. This includes Clark was a prominent member of the Workers' Party, a socialist activist group that raised money for the PFLP through the sale of T-shirts with the resistance is not terrorism emblazoned across them. It also gives a link to the 48-page pamphlet of which Baron Clark is influential in. So mainstream media allow Baron Clark to character assassinate law-abiding citizens, report on the parliamentary sit-in, where he re-victimizes a nation in grief. He goes on about the mosque attacks and alt-right, saying that I inspired the mosque attacks. And yet mainstream media allow Baron Clark to character assassinate people who are grieving from what has happened over the last 3 years. So a very important informational video has been produced by Trevor Loudon, his report on Beijing, New Zealand national security threat by the Communist Chinese Party and the political influences within Parliament itself refers to the manipulations of minority populations, Hipkins and others abetting the Beijing agenda, the Chinese Communist Party buying up farmland in New Zealand. So this has been through my research. And Baron Clark has gone on about the alt-right, white supremacy, far-right extremism, causing the mosque attacks in Christchurch in 2019, 15th March 2019. Yet, if you go to the Royal Inquiry, the 17 community questions to the Royal Inquiry, the response as to who were they fearful of was Daesh, leading up to Ramadan for 5 years prior up to the mosque attacks. It also states there was nothing about right-wing extremism, white supremacy, alt-right in New Zealand of any significance at all until Jacinda Ardern amended her report in 2019 after the mosque attacks. So wake up, New Zealand.